Hi, everybody. It's Nancy from For Your Canine.
And Joanne from Fur Better Fur Worse.
And Lisa Batasco with Canine Defined.
Hello. Today we're going to be talking a little bit. I know we always talk about train the dog in front of you and all of those things, but sometimes breed differences can help and maybe in some cases hinder some of your training. So we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that and and kind of give you some tips on how to, depending on what your breed is or what your dog has a more of a tendency towards, to help with your training, how you train your dog. Because I wish I could tell you that it'd be great that you could train the dogs all the same way, but especially those of us who have a lot of different breeds or a variety of breeds or have had a variety of breeds, every dog is different in how they learn and how they, how you can train them and all that stuff. So that's why we wanted to kind of, you know, um, we all went to a seminar, and this is kind of, I was talking to somebody else about it, and I thought this would be a good topic to talk about because I know we always talk about train the dog in front of you, but sometimes certain things are, I guess it's the first place to try. Like for example, dogs that are more visual, like herding and shepherds and guardian breeds. Sometimes you maybe using hand signals might be better for that particular breed than some of the other dogs that are more auditory or factory or auditory or factory. Yeah. So that are or kinesthetic, right. Right. So it's kind of give you some tips like um and I'm gonna pick on Noel's dog, Noah. I bet you know Joanne can actually.
My name's Joanne, not Noelle, by the way.
That's how
It's
tired
been
I
a
am.
long day.
It has been. Joanne's dog.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, Noah. Um, he is very kinesthetic. He likes to be touched. He likes to be pet. So I bet Joanne can Hex ask him to sit, ask him to down, ask him to do a variety of things. And if she gives him a pat or a tap or a hug, he would probably be really good with that. While she uses treats for sure, but he would probably be pretty happy with some of that or working with her in that way. Would you agree, Joanne?
Nah,
I mean,
yes.
you could,
Yes.
right?
But not like I wouldn't use that. I don't think he'd be okay with that learning something new, right?
Right.
Like it's a
So,
oh crap, I don't have
reinforce.
any treats. What a good boy. Like, yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Totally.
You would be like, "Oh, that's great."
Right.
Where and I would absolutely say that Tango would probably be able to learn something new just with petting him. I mean, not that you shouldn't use treats. No, we're not saying that at all. It's just something to think about when you're working on different things or training different things. My shepherd loves to be touched, loves to be handled. He loves all that. So you can, if you don't, you can use praise um, to reinforce him for certain things you like. Now there are some dogs, like for example, if I do that to my lab, she'll be like, I don't, I don't think that's right, right? She would do it, but she'd be like, wait, I need my treats. Where my shepherd would probably be pretty happy with being petted. Um, Probably not all the time, obviously, but occasionally that would be something you could use, right? And I just think about because Joanne's dog gets so happy when you pet him and you tell him what a good boy he is. He's ridiculous. so so I bet you if she was it goes back to Suzanne's naked on the mountaintop, she could probably get Noah to do quite a bit of stuff up there without it. Where Roscoe and Fire would be like, I don't think so, right? They'd be a little bit like there's got to be more to this. So, what would you agree with some of your dogs? Because that's not something we think about or we think about using on a regular basis, right?
Praise and touch.
Yeah, praise, right.
Well, and there's a way to do it, right? So if you have a dog who, first you build a relationship and a trust component, and then get the dogs to understand that you're safe, right? So social support. Social security. Oh my God, social support. Sadly, that doesn't happen. We're all very tired. Um, and security, safety, and security, right, is just part of the relationship that you share. Like most of my dogs right now, yeah, they want treats, but they're at different ages as they get older and stuff. Like everybody's different. So like Ivy will always do everything for a treat, but her arousal level goes higher, which is not necessarily the peak performance I want, right? So, and it depends on the task at hand. So she can do stuff, but if you've ever seen her work, her eyes are all buggy and stuff like that. So that I don't think that's necessarily the best, most thoughtful or mindful performance I can get out of her.
Right.
But everybody's different.
Right. And you really want to think about, like Joanne alluded to earlier, you want, like, you could probably use it now for stuff that he already knows, but you doing, petting and praise for stuff, for something new might be a little tougher for some dogs. Now, I have seen people that you try to use praise or touch for reinforcement, and that's back it's an old school. They should do it for praise. Some dogs are like, no. And again, it depends on.
If I were a dog, that'd be me. I'm like, don't touch me. No touchy.
Right. For some dogs, that's actually not very reinforcing at all. That's actually punishing for some dogs, being touched and all that.
Well, I think, or you don't forget, it can also be too much. Some dogs touch can put that dog into overdrive where they can't learn because it excites them so much, or
Oh yes, right. Well, and that's true, right? And that, you guys, that's true of all reinforcement, right? Whether it's a treat, a toy, touch, you really have to know, and that's where some of the breed tendencies come into play, right? Some dogs that are more kinesthetic. Would you say sporting dogs are more kinesthetic dogs? Ish.
I would actually, because Vizslas are very touchy-feely. Labradors are, well, really, like, they're the ones that are always like rubbing all over stuff and on the ground. Goldens do that too. I have noticed more like Weimaraner, and again, this isn't every dog, but like I've almost noticed more sensitivity in Weims. Right. They get that that like jumpy when you touch them. I mean, so I don't know what that is.
Yeah, right. But if you think about it, they're bred to hunt out in the field, so they're going to be touched with brush and trees and all that stuff, and they probably should be able to tolerate that pretty well. Where some of the and that's true too. Would you say? Well, and they're more sensitive to touch. Where wouldn't you say the working breeds are not as? They're a little bit duller on that, except for my shepherd. But most other shepherds and Malinois, to be honest, right?
I think that the Malinois are a little more twitchy, right, to response. It's like a fast response, and then, like, I guess, like, thinking about, like, going when we went to the Resilience Rainbow and stuff, and they talked about the Yerkestad curve and that peak performance, right? Is it enough or is it too much? Because there's that peak, right? And I think it depends on what we breed for, of course, because we have to try to manipulate genetics as much as we think we can. But I think too, like Lucas, who was a mini Australian Shepherd, he was very into touch. Like, touch was important to him. Fling, it almost was like, it was very exciting for him as well. Fender, Ivy, not as much, but those dogs were bred to be more, they would do more Frisbee stuff, right? So they were more active and stuff. So if you think about the job at hand, you're going to want to, within the breed towards that tendency based upon what the dog is designed, what you're looking for the dog to do as a terms of a job, if that makes sense, right? So for Frisbee, they're going to want more kinesthetic touch, right? So if you do like freestyle where they're touching them and jumping on them and stuff, they have to be okay with that and actually yearn for it to some degree, I think, right? So yes, you would breed for more, for that something that you want more of, not less of. So
versus when you have the working breeds, which are supposed to be, I mean, let's be fair, originally protection breeds, you know what I mean? You can kick them, you can smack them, you can hit them. Not advocating for that, but right. You know, I mean, they're supposed to be able to like whatever, do whatever, and I'm still coming at you. I mean, or I will stand my ground.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why my shepherd is, you know, not. he's the complete opposite. But and that's why when we're talking about some of the breed tendencies, it really does mean it depends on the dog, because every dog is different. But if you want to kind of think about it as you're going into your training situation, right? Think about what you're going to use for reinforcers, because one of the things that and people are not random. People are very predictable. So it's kind of nice sometimes. And I find myself like really thinking about it. Like I give them a cookie or I give them a pet. And Joanne has judged me in nose work, and my dog does get very, very happy when I pet him and I cuddle him and I tell him what a good boy he is. It really motivates him to keep working. Where my lab's like, I don't understand why you're so happy about that, but exactly right. So sometimes I have to think about, like in my training, I try to incorporate that a little more because he likes it more. So does my young puppy.
Well, and I think it's important to even throw training out the window, right? For just a second. But when you talk about I have a family pet or just you single, whatever, your dog that lives in your house, like I am someone. I remember my very first dog was like, I love you, but from over here. Like, I'm not a snuggler. I'm not you can pet me a little and then I need to go. So I was devastated, right? Because I'm like, why don't you love me? So she did love me very much, but she didn't enjoy that. So if you are someone who has a lot of people in the house or kids, or you yourself really enjoy the dog that drapes themselves across you or likes to spoon in bed or whatever that is, right? If you want a touchy-feely dog, you know, if you're picking out anybody, adult, puppy, whatever, you can tell that, right? If you go out to pet that dog and they're like, a lot of times, right, unless there's some fear or things like that at play, right? If a dog's pulling back or doesn't really enjoy that stuff, that's not a fluke, right?
Right.
So if I had a family full of children are gonna touch, hug, lay on. I mean, we try our best, right, to educate children to not do that, because even touchy-feely dogs don't enjoy that stuff. However, I am gonna pick a dog that would be like the Vizsla that I have, right? Like, oh, I love it. I love it when everybody touches me and pets me and I get to lay on him and snuggle with him, right? That's the dog I want for my family. Although I think Nancy hates that in a dog. So, right? It's something you were like, I don't want that dog, right? A
little bit. I like a little bit of snuggling, but not over.
And then go away.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, where I don't mind this. So it's just a difference in humans too, right? Same as dogs are different, humans are different in what they want, and there's not right or wrong at all. So it's just what we choose. I don't know what Lisa chooses.
No touchy.
I've seen you smush that pappy on and kiss.
I do. And you know what? And there's like some of them. I do it when they're puppies. I'm like, oh my god, I love you so much, and I just want to squeeze them and bite them and eat them and all that. But I think then I pay attention. I'm like, oh, because he's like, oh, stop. His ears go back. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, but I have to do this. I can't help it. Right. It's like that. What do they call that? That syndrome, domestication syndrome. You're like, I must want to touch. Right. And I get that. But then I have to stop myself and go, okay, fine. Just be a dog. And I think that like when they're puppies, like the reason why they're so cute and adorable when they're puppies is to like, it's by design, right? Because, you know, we're like, oh my God, they're so adorable. And you just can watch them forever. But then as they grow, you start to learn them. And I think I'm not a super touchy-feely. I'm kind of like when I want it and then, okay, go away type of thing. I know it's very selfish, but that's me. But like if I were my dog, I think I'd bite myself a little bit more than the average person.
Well, I like it occasionally, and like my shepherd is more like Joanne's Vizsla, so it's a little hard. He is a lot like that actually, which again, going back to the training, that's why I can use when I train him, I can use petting and hugging and cuddling because he likes that. He enjoys it. And you know, I make sure I do, you know, because sometimes when I get busy, I don't cuddle and hug him and as much. So I make sure I'm trying to be more conscious of that. And he, you know, like before going to bed, we do a cuddle session, and before, and then he's, you know, and then, you know, and then he's okay. But he, you know, the more you give, the more he, because that's what he likes a lot. That's part of his what he enjoys. Um, and and which go and so this is an interesting thing. It goes back to for training, he really would prefer a toy to food. If I was better coordinated, he'd probably have more of that because he prefers toy much more to food, which is an interesting because he's kinesthetic a lot. He does toys are much more preferable to food, where the lab is all about food, as you can tell.
Hurry up! I'm hungry.
Mm.
No,
Um,
the other consideration I think you also have to consider, you have to like think about is when I'm busy at a task and I'm trying to focus. If somebody tries to touch me, my reaction is going to be like, "Stop it! I'm not interested." Right? Versus when I'm relaxed and we're just hanging. There's a difference in that.
Sure.
So, like I found, like with some of my dogs, when they're working, they're like, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to do this thing. Let's engage. And then they become a little more standoffish with other dogs, right? If the dog's like, come on, what are you doing? I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I've seen that with my guys. And I just, it's interesting, right? Because I note that and I'm like, okay, they're trying to stay engaged with me. And they may not be okay with other dogs interacting with other people because they'll go say hi to people, but they're like, okay, what are we doing? But I also attribute it to the fact that relationship is really important when you're working with dogs.
Right. And so you definitely, and so so going back to some of the breed stuff. So again, for some of the dogs that some of the depending on the breed, some of the sporting dogs, tossing a treat is a lot more fun than having them chase because they enjoy chase, versus some of the dogs that enjoy tugging. Right, they might enjoy that better in play, depending on what the, you know, what the dog was bred for. Right, so it's kind of an interesting thing to kind of note when you're working with your dog, right? Where you work when you're training them, like what do they prefer? Because I think sometimes, and sometimes I can be guilty of this too. In training classes, we tend to always use treats because it's just easier in many cases. But we definitely have to encourage our people to consider what their breed is doing, what their dog is bred to do, and maybe look at some different types of reinforcement that are meaningful for that particular dog. And it goes back to what Lisa said earlier: learning your dog, learning what they really care about, what they enjoy. It really makes training so much easier when you're kind of, and they don't have to be long to, you know, I'm not saying that have the dog do a sit and a down and just pet them all the time, because like Joanne said, that'd be like, okay, I'm kind of over that now. I mean to incorporate it on an occasion, to change up the reinforcement for the dog in the training session. It's just something that they really enjoy, right? It just,
Well,
and it's more work for us too, right?
yep, I'll give you an example. Noah does prefer to catch his treats. Like he
Yes.
finds that so fun. And you know, if I'm ever working nose work, I'm not throwing treats in a trial because, right, I don't want that to contaminate my search area if he doesn't catch it or any of that. But I will tell you, 90% of the time, if I'm working him, right, I just, and he likes it when they come at him really fast. So I fire about 5-6 of them at him, and he's like Jaws, and he leaps up and he snaps and he catches them and he catches them. And at trials, after our search, right, to tell him that I'm kind of proud of him, he usually will walk on my side and I'll just flip a treat kind of right up, and he does a little front end leap up and he snaps the treat out of the air, and he snaps the treat out of the air, or I'll roll it in front of us and he'll run down and snap it. It's almost like that predatory sequence, but with food, which is funny because he's so not predatory on anything that has a heartbeat. But anyway,
He would die in the wild. Yes, you are right.
he would. It's that those are some of the things that like I would never throw treats in a trial, but just because I wouldn't do it in a trial, it doesn't mean that if he super enjoys that, I'm not going to use that in my training sessions. And I do, and he thinks it's the best thing ever. So
yeah, that's really that's and that's what I mean. They might like that, where some breeds may not enjoy that reinforcement delivery as much because of the, like, I don't know if the herding breeds would enjoy that so much.
the throwing,
Yeah, they have. I
I think it depends. I think they like the chase part of it, right?
Yeah.
The chase and the grab. Because I'm thinking about like when I play with the herding breeds, my herding breeds like Tenor and stuff, he likes the chase and the grab, not necessarily the retrieve of the ball or whatever, but we're working on stuff. And honestly, it's relative. But he likes that chase. He likes the intensity and the stalking behavior of, oh my God, you're going to throw it. And I get stiff and still and I'm watching. And then I go run to chase it. And then it's not even about the capture and the return to me. It's about he's able to chase it and then reorient to me and find center, right? And then it doesn't matter if anybody else gets the ball. Then he's like, okay, do it again. That to him is highly reinforcing. Mm-hmm. So there are things that I have to think about in that regard. Kay likes to grab, like my Dutch Shepherd. She'll like to run, grab it, and then chew it, and then bash it into your hand and stuff like that, or bash it on the border collie's head. I don't know, whichever one. But she really enjoys that mouthing thing. Right. And I'm like, I don't care. But I think this also brings up like learn your dog, but also like reinforcement is relative to the individual, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody, regardless of breed tendency. And I'm bringing up what we did recently the past weekend, like how they talked about decompression and then completing the stress cycle post-event. And so I found that interesting. And I did some testing out and stuff like that. I think I sent you guys some videos about it. It was very interesting. I think it was cool because like if you're a person, like if I had a regular job where I was going into an office setting, and what I did in the past is I'd come in, I'd set my purse down, I'd have my keys, put everything where I need them to be. I'd have my coffee, I'd go potty, I'd look at what I have to do today, and then I would do my job, right? So that's your decompression part, is getting set up, and then the event, and then post-event would be after work. I go home, I sit down, I watch TV, or whatever it is I do to complete my stress cycle. Some people exercise. That's not my preference. However, I probably should more of. Actually, and what's crazy is I actually prefer to, like me personally, some people like will exercise in the evening or maybe midday. I prefer in the morning because I'm like, I'm fresh, I'm good, I'm going to do my thing. And then I go to work. And then I concentrate, and then, okay, I want to stop. And everybody's different, right? Like we all have our ways. And I think that's what's critical to understand about each individual dog that comes into your life, right? So I really like that idea of the sequence of like decompression, and then working, and then completing the stress cycle. I thought that was very fascinating. And I thought that, again, every dog is different.
Right. And like I said, so every dog is different. Like my Shepherd is more kinesthetic, which is unusual for that breed, to be so lovey, touchy, whatever. But that's who he is. And so I try to, it's about seeing what works for you and for your dog, and how they handle the stresses of training, because training is stressful. When you're learning something new, it's stressful. So you want to make sure you help them decompress, go through the learning cycle, and then, and go through the cycle and be able to have more of it and recover. And one of the things that there's a study, I can't remember where it was from, that play helped dogs remember more of what they learned. Play after training. So it's all if and again it depends on your dog. If your dog's is gonna be into it and want to play with you, that's an option too that you want to incorporate into your training as well. After they're after let's say after you do a little training session, do a little play session after, and see what you get. See if they're remember things better the next round and all that. So because you can test it and see if they enjoy that. And again, you're gonna play is going to be relative depending on what your breed is and what they enjoy, what your dog is. And again, there are some tendencies, but every dog is an individual. Says, well, because we hear it all the time. Oh, well, it's just a border collie thing, or it's just a Malinois thing. It could be, but there's also an individual piece of it, right? They're predisposed to certain things, but they're still an individual dog. So you have to kind of see what floats their boat, and just kind of figuring out what breed tendencies that have just helps you kind of come up with some things that you can use as reinforcement and to help in your training. For example, if you have a very visual dog, hand signals are going to be easier for them to follow, and they're going to be, it'll be quicker for them to learn it maybe. A dog who and you'll notice it, like some dogs that are more auditory, they will be able to do a lot of stuff verbally without a lot of hand signals, because they're more auditory. They'll hear you. Because if you've ever tried to train a dog who's more visual, and the person is more auditory or talky, very talkative, very talkative, they're like, right? Training gets hard because you're talking and that's not how they learn, right? You're going to have to, they're more visual. So that's when those are some of the things you want to think about when you're training, is what your style is and what your dog has a tendency for, right? More.
So like one of the things I'll say is, so I have a toy breed, a Papillon, and I have a herding breed. And I realize that although I enjoy the toy breeds, it's much more fun for me to train my herding breeds.
Would you say because it's easier?
It's quicker. It's a faster response. And here's the thing, like, are you goal oriented or what are you, right? So if I'm goal oriented, then of course I'm going to want a dog who's quicker responding, right? That matches where I'm headed. But my toy breed, and I think it's important as a trainer to have multiple types of breeds to help you stay on your game, if that makes sense. Like, and I'm attracted to certain types of breeds. So I'm going to stay within the realm of my comfort zone. Okay. So my toy breeds I've had before, and I've had super independent breed, like a Maltese. She was wonderful and adorable, but very pushy. And I just didn't jive with her. Like, I was like, you're a jerk. I love you, but you're still a jerk. And so she's like pushy and stuff like that. The Papillons are kind of still interested in learning, but the difference I think is that, like with Riff, and I didn't notice this when I had them originally, but like I noticed that, one, I'm more forgiving because he's a little guy. Now, if he were a Doberman or a German Shepherd or a bully breed, I would be less tolerant of some of the behaviors he exhibits, like his little resource guarding stuff, like don't touch his mine, that type of thing, and the hovering. And I'm like, you know what? I could just pick you up and make it stop, right? And I think that's a realistic point. But I also realized too, I'm like, hurry up and grow up. Why don't you know how to down yet? What's your problem, right? And those are things that it's annoying to me, but at the same time, I'm learning grace within that, right? Because that's who he is. And I think as you age, you start to learn to accept things and individuals for who they are rather than fight against it, because what's the point if you do, right? What's the benefit to it?
Yeah. And that's why it's all relative as well, right? Because let's take a novice person with a herding breed. Right. Which, like, I believe that we are all skilled trainers and we can be very clear and get a behavior in a few reps, right? Which is fantastic if you have a herding breed, because if you are slow or late or whatever, they're like this, right? This again, what about this? This, and you're like, oh my God, stop it. Right. And it's That is super annoying sometimes. Like if you're tired or you're feeling not as sharp. I don't train the border collie when I'm feeling that way, right? Because oh my God. And then 3 months later, they're like, it was this the last time. The last time we did it. And you're like, it wasn't. Remember I told you 17 times it wasn't that? Put it in the Rolodex. I flipped it in and it's so yeah.
That's well, that's really true because they're so quick to learn and they're just like, yeah, how about this and this and this and
you're like, not that one, that one. You're like,
and then it becomes annoying. You're like, what is wrong with you? I thought you were smart, right? I mean, you're like,
could you just stop? Just stop for 1 second and listen to what I'm telling you.
I also think that's a fallout from being a trainer. Like, look what my dog can do and stuff like that. And it becomes, and this is where I see a lot of trainers. I mean, let's be honest, a majority of trainers have herding breeds because they make us look good. They make us look good.
I don't have one.
Well, you have a herding breed, and actually Cha-Cha made you look good.
Yeah, she did.
So you know what I'm saying? I mean, and then we go
Not
for
so
it
much
again.
anymore, but yes, she did.
we go for it. We go for it because it does. And honestly, it's a thrill. But at the same time, I think it's important to realize that because then you get that whole, like, I can do this and this. Is this what you want? This what you want? And honestly, I find it extremely annoying. I'm like, I thought you were smart. What's the problem? Right. And I think, too, that's why it's important to be able to handle multiple dogs and get the behaviors that is interested, what's interested to the individual person that owns the dog, because what I think is important is irrelevant if the person's like, well, I don't really care about that. Okay, right. Fine. What do you want to do? And how do we get to that means to the end? Or, it is kind of goalish, if you will. But at the same time, you still got to look at that individual because I know, like, hey, oh my goodness. Tenor is super touchy. Hi, I'm here. My border collie. Hi, I'm here. And I'm like, can you stop touching me? Because I'm not a fan, right? And so those are some things to think about, like working in that piece of it. Right. I'm going to mute myself because my borders are a little excited right now.
Okay. So going back to seeing what, you using what you're, so for example, I don't know if you guys have used the Premack principle on certain things, but we had GSP, German Shorthair Pointer, that was very persistent on sniffing stuff that we didn't want him to. We wanted him to do a behavior, but he was really wanting to sniff. So he's a very olfactory dog. So how do you use that in your training when the dog is just sniff on everything that you want? So what we had to do is back up the behavior. We made it real simple that the dog can absolutely do it. Well, let's pretend we're asking for a sit, right? Or we put him in outside, sitting outside in the meadow, and that was hard because they wanted to sniff. So we asked him to sit. We got the behavior really quick, and then we allowed him to then go back and do the sniffing. So his reinforcement was sniffing because he found that so incredibly reinforcing. And then eventually we made the behaviors more challenging. And this specifically was for nose work. When he's sniffing, he was like, oh, there's odor, but oh, there's all this other stuff here. So we made the hide so simple that he had to get it. And he sniffed it. And then he was allowed to sniff what he wanted to check out there was some other animal stuff. And that seemed to work to build that desire for him to find this first, then you can do your own thing. So, because he's such an olfactory dog, like crazy olfactory. So we used that instead of fighting against it, which I think one of you mentioned it, instead of fighting against that tendency, we just are going to use it to get the behaviors that we wanted. And that's one way. And I think Joanne used a similar thing with a previous Vizsla she had to get what
birds.
She wanted. Birds.
Yep, absolutely. Now I will tell you, I have another student who I don't know what to call it except for a reverse Premack. So and I took it going to, we'll talk a little bit about this seminar that you keep hearing us talking about. That's next week's topic.
Yep.
So tune in. It's super duper interesting. But I took a little bit of what we learned there, and this dog is like, he likes the game, but it's, oh, there was a footprint here and a squirrel farted over here and there was a something, right? And so every little thing, and then eventually he's like, oh, and there's odor, and then thanks for the food, and then now I gotta go sniff. So he does enjoy the game of nose work, but it is so overpowering for him to take all of that olfactory information in. And so I try to use it as a reward, and it was all right. You know, I mean, he liked it, but it wasn't, oh, this is the solution we've been looking for. So what I did was I created a kind of like a box that, think about it like I made a snuffle mat out of socks and blankets and a dog bed. And like I shoved it all in this box. So there was a whole bunch of different things in there. And it was kind of like in one of the big like fruit carriers, like the cardboard fruit boxes at like the big stores like Costco. And so I just shoved it all in here, and we got him out of the car, and I was like, here. And he was like, oh my God. And I said, as long as he wants, I don't care how long it takes him. We got 10 minutes if he wants to spend 10 minutes on this box. And he probably snuffled around in there for 2.5, 3 minutes. And I was like, now go search. And that dog was like, okay. Never dropped his head once. I was like, oh, like it was like the thing we've been looking for so long. Now, whether or not it will continue to work.
Well, right.
But to me, it wasn't, I said, we're not using this as a reward. We're using this because he has an innate need inside of him. He has to do this, right?
Right.
He's not, we can't make it stop with food or correction or anything like that. So let's just say, all right, buddy, you ready? And it's sort of, oh, okay, like, got it. Boom, I can go do my work. And I said, and then bring him back and let him do the same thing.
I wonder if you could do the same thing with nature smells for that GSP, because he could care less about, all that other stuff. But something like, grab
a thing, some leaves, some dirt, something somebody peed on. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right.
Just a nice little plastic shoebox or something that you have, and be like, okay, buddy, I'm just like, again, and I only did it one time, but it was, I should have filmed it. It was like, I couldn't believe the results I got.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
well, that's the video from the seminar, right?
Yeah.
With the agility. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't even think about it as the same, right? Because this is he's a big dog, and he's not fast, right? Where when we watched it, it was agility, and it sort of helped the dog kind of keep everything together and know where its body was. This is just like, I got that out of my system already, so I don't feel the need to do it yet. It was great.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. Yeah, because the GSPs were like, they really want to sniff nature.
Yeah.
Outside.
Well, and when you talk sporting breeds, right? GSPs, and again, this is a generalization. There are always exceptions to the rule, but GSPs almost strike me as a mix of like a sporting, but they tend more towards working breed stuff because they're much tougher, and they're not kinesthetic, and they're, you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
you can like smack them and they're like, what? Like, again, don't smack your dog, but I'm just saying, like, they seem much tougher. They have much more of that working breed type of like, butthead, I'm gonna do it my way.
Yeah, right. So it's really hard to get them, you really have to make it worth their while to do what you want them to do. So it's,
Yep.
So that's why always looking for what what they enjoy or what that breed enjoys, to be able to then use it in some of the training, and in some cases to fix some of the behavior issues that might arise, right? If a person, you have to make it, because there's not I wish there would be like a one size fits all training, and that we could all do it the same way, and everybody will get the same results, and all these dogs will be really well trained, because we see that, right? Sometimes there's like, we want my dog to be trained like that. I'm like, well, first of all, that's a border collie, and you have a pug, it's it's going to be a little different, and what they're going to find reinforcing is going to be a little different, and your style and your approach is going to be a little different. So you want to make sure that you are always cognizant of what you have and who your dog is. And like, I'll be honest, Lisa, have you ever, I know, Lisa, you use a flirt pole for some stuff. Have you met dogs that don't like it?
Oh yeah.
Right? Which breeds don't tend to like it so much?
Honestly, I don't. What's weird is like I look at breed, but it that becomes secondary to the individual.
Right. But
Every,
but,
but
but you probably, if you think about it, you'd probably
hounds, for example,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
That's the first
They're
thing
like, that's stupid. Let me see.
that would be-
Hounds,
my
sight
beagle,
hounds.
every time I wave come on, she's like, no, I don't want to do that.
I mean, truly, I think about hounds. Terriers will go after it. Herding breeds can go after it. You can work that into the repertoire. Sometimes toy breeds, depending on
Right.
what they're designed to do. Like,
Mhm.
I think, some visual breeds. But again, you have to look at the genetics of it, right? To
Sure.
see which dog is bred to use sight and then hunting type of skills or grab and chase, right? So in terms of the predatory sequence.
Right.
Yeah.
Because and that's what I mean. And all the tendencies just give you a place to start. It doesn't
Right.
mean that that's where it's going to go. Because you're right. Some dogs will be like, you might have a beagle that it's like, I love the flirt pole. I'm gonna chase it, and it's great. But I noticed I just, because I have a shepherd, two labs, and a beagle, and so they're all very different. And I try to, my labs like to, they'll chase stuff. And I tried it with the beagle, and she's like, "No, I don't, I don't, I don't care about that so much." She'll be interested briefly, and then she's like, "Okay, that's good."
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, right. She goes, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and you were happy there for a minute, but I don't care about it so much."
But I also think,
and I'll chase it.
Yeah,
I also think too, it's the relationship you have with the dogs, because there are dogs that you meet and all you got to do is, hey, you want to do something fun, right? And it's your interactions, right? Your eye contact, intensity of the eye contact, the fact that you're novel. That's why I think as trainers, sometimes we're able to dial into the dog quicker than the owner, because we are novel. It's,
yes.
It is interesting, right? And then the dogs, you get more buy-in because they're like, you get me. What are we doing? What's next?
Right.
And I really like that connection. But at the same time, I'm like, and they're like, oh my gosh, they love you. Well, it's just because I know how to connect. And connection is not the same as like,
do the thing for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's, especially when, like, we as trainers usually use other, our students' dogs to demo. Like, this is, because when we teach something, we might have to show several different ways of getting the same behavior, because, right, everybody's not going to find the one way that is going to work really well for them. And so it's really important that you might have to show a couple of different methods and different ways of getting the behavior when you're teaching. So you have to be able to kind of, like she said, plug into that dog, kind of learn that dog, and be able to so the dog can you can get the dog and play. And then we're also very excited, and also our attention is very, very focused on the dog, because I think that's what a lot of people see training as a chore instead of a fun way to spend time with your dog, learning different things, and all that. The people who do that tend to do dog sports, that enjoy that constant learning and trying to figure the dog out, and trying to learn with the dog, and kind of do something together. They tend to go get into the dog sports, right? I would say.
Or then there's Lisa.
What's me?
Oh yeah, right.
She's not really into the dog sports, right? You like to play with the dogs, but
I like to play. Here's the thing. I do love the sport part about it. And that's not the biggest issue, is the availability and honestly time. Like, I love playing with my dogs. I like I like to teach them new things and so forth. But honestly, if you're going to say to me, Lisa, and my dogs, like, I feel like we live a very good life together overall, even though if we don't compete or don't do certain things, we still enjoy each other's company. I try to provide them with different stimulus. They help me with my job. But I guess sometimes, like, I'm going to be honest, yeah, I get lazy. I don't want to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and sit for a trial. I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, I love it. I love playing with my dogs.
Lisa would enjoy. Well, no, Grandma wouldn't
But-
enjoy it either. But
Yeah.
like doing a midnight agility trial or
Right.
We need lunch trials. Lunch
Lunch-
trials.
That's right. And they have to be like a couple hours and we're done. Right? And I'm like, yes, I'm in. I'll do that. You know,
So,
but so anyway, it was one of those things that you really do want to you want to really incorporate more of yourself into the training too, right? So for example, like I'm a very talky, chatty person, so I have to be mindful of the dog I have in front of me. Some dog, like with my shepherd, if I talk to him, it'll be like, I just love when you talk to me, and he's all attentive and he's all about it. My female lab might, turn off the voice radio here in a minute. She'll be like, "Oh, I've got other." If it's too much or too long, right? Where my male lab is much more, you know, also very attentive, and what are we doing and what are we talking about, right? And the beagle, we're still developing that relationship. It seems to be getting better over time. So she's still. I have to figure out a way for me to be more interesting, because she will find something else that's more entertaining than I am, depending on the situation, where we are and what we're doing. If it's at home, she'll give me a lot of attention, but in a new place, she's going to be checking stuff out and seeing what's going on. So I will be a little less interesting for her. So I'm still, like I said, we're still working on that part. So, so I'm going to put it out to you guys. What are some of the things your dogs you used in training that was different or unique, that you found that was really helpful for your breed or your particular dog style? Because it's so interesting what some people come up with, right? And also some of the stuff those of us who do nose work, some of the things that dogs get reinforced with. We had raw chicken hearts once, which was fabulous. It's like, Ronnie says more lunch trials than early stuff. Yeah, I get that. I'm kind of an evening person myself. So, some of the, like I said, I try to use more praise with my dogs. Of course, food is, number one for my dogs, and toys for my shepherd. But I also try to be, very engaged. My puppy, again, we're still learning how to do that. So I still he likes food, but he also seems to enjoy retrieving and playing ball some. I don't know if it's more than food right now, but we're still figuring that out, because that's the other thing. Things change over time as your dogs mature and get older, and they might like something they might have liked when they were 6 months old is not something they're going to like when they're a year or 2 years old, right? So you have to also take that into consideration, depending on, and also as they become sexually mature, that's going to change some things as well. So anybody, anything cool? So a couple things. What have you guys used that's different for training as a reinforcement for your and what breed did you use it for?
not different. I've used a tug toy for Bam to get him leash walking and healing and that sort of thing, because he doesn't find walking nicely that motivating for a cookie. So bite it and kill it. You make me hold it together, and then I can let loose. I'm happy. I'll give it to you.
But let's go. That's really good though, because he has impulse control issues. So you use that as that's really good. It's like, okay, you can let it out.
It did. It was originally like, give me 3 steps and I'll let you bite the thing. And then let's do it again and do it again. And now, like, we can do, I mean, he has some like C-Wags rally titles on him, which God bless him. Nobody ever thought that was possible. But, you know, that's the thing that got us there was like, you can do it, buddy. I know you can. So.
Yeah. So Amy Barth. So this is a unique one. Amy's like, Amy's like, one of my dogs doesn't love toys, but he loves socks and undies. So I tied those things to a holy roller.
I love it.
That is clever. Why fight
great.
it? That's clever. That's a really good. That's really good. Crush will work for praise, but food toys work well. Can't say that's different though. He's a lab. Yeah. Talking to a GST. Yes. My shepherds both have my shepherds have both been enjoyed when I talk to them and all that, which kind of works out well because I tend to talk a lot, especially in competition because I get a little nervous. So with Tango, I have a little bit better situation, but he really likes toys a lot too. So it's hard for me to say if does he like me talking to him more than toys? I don't know. Today toys won out, but that was me. Grady and Eva like trying to be the first to scent hide. Competition is the driver. Yeah. Oh, that's a good yes. Carol, that's a really good point. If those of us who have multiple dogs, if you're training and then you use a little bit of competition, like I'm going to take this dog out and work him, and you can watch that dog while you work the other one. For some dogs, that works really well too. It's really, it's actually pretty motivating for some dogs. For some dogs, it gets real loud, but or they don't find it as fun. Or some dogs are like, well, go ahead, work him. I don't care. So so again, they have to both want that interaction or whatever you're doing. That's a good idea though. I like that. I use it. I'll be honest, Carol, I've used it for nose work. The competition part, like I'll take them, but I haven't I haven't tried it for like working obedience or loosey swacking or anything like that. So I think that's interesting.
Food. Yeah.
They still the holistics like ew, anchovies?
Ronnie's dog says they still like the same treats they have since the beginning. Amazing they still like them, which it is, right? Is the variety of life. They're like,
yeah,
the same things. Cheerios with milk. No. So holistic select anchovies and some kibble. Well, and one more thing to get you to think about, right? Not just what we use for our dogs reward based, but training, right? Because like I have always been a very quiet, minimalistic trainer, right? I like a quiet voice. I might use a little hand signals, but I'm not, I don't get big like that. And oh my God, like Bam was like, doesn't register. So I always joke about Amy Wukatich. You can hear her coming with her dogs from a mile away, right? And I feel like I have to do that with Bam because I'm like, right here, you need to walk with me. You got it? Good boy. Are you ready? All right, come over here. Hey, come back. I was like, I hate it.
Because that's not yours.
I hate it. And I've been trying to find something else, but like he needs it. He needs like that barrage of like still doing it, still with me, still doing the thing. Are you still with me? Like, oh my God, it's who he is. It's who he is.
He enjoys that. Incredibly, he enjoys that interaction more and lots of it.
But I don't know if it's an enjoyable thing as much as like
stay with me.
And it's the impulse control thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, I'm doing it. What? Oh, right, I'm with you. Oh, there's a bird. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Right? It's like ADD to the nth degree sometimes, and it's just I feel like I need to wave the flag, like, still here, buddy. Keep it with me. But I do not enjoy it, and he's a struggle sometimes to train because he pushes me into a style of training, and I don't mean like good, bad, or indifferent, but just a way that I have to use myself and my body that's uncomfortable to me. But it works for him. And so I got to bring that to the table, right? I have to alter myself to do what's best for my dog.
Right. And it's interesting because especially those, if you're working multiple dogs, it can get kind of
Mm.
challenging to figure out because it's easy to forget, right? Because you tend to fall into what's comfortable for you, not what's comfortable for the dogs, right?
Yep.
And sometimes you have to, bring it a little bit. But and in Amy's case, how creative she got to undies and socks.
Yeah.
That's that works, right? And so, but yeah, and it is kind of a thinking outside the box. What works for your, and so it sounds like Amy's dogs are a little more visual or olfactory, depending on what they're doing with the socks and undies. But usually, uh, they tend to like to pull them and tug them a little bit more and more visual for them. I think. I don't know. Anyway, so this is one of the things I wanted to again, the thinking about what your breeds are bred to do, and also it also will keep that top of mind a little bit, because we get so many people that say, "Oh, this dog is you can't keep him out of the water, and it's a lab," or "He's nipping at the children, and it's an Aussie or a border collie." Or he's doing this, it kind of keeps you, it kind of makes you think about what your dog was bred to do so that you can really think about ways to give them what they need. Because remember, they're living in our world, not in we're not living in theirs anymore. So we need to really think about they need, especially depending on what they're and sometimes this is one way we can bring that to them or give them what they need because of what they're bred to do. Because you know I had a guy who got a Vizsla that they're bred to work in the fields for hours and hours and run, and they're very active dogs, and he was living in a condo in downtown Chicago. Well, that's tough for that breed. It's tough life for that dog.
Not
um,
all of them.
yeah. Again, exceptions to every rule. And then I had yeah, and now that you say that, same another couple lived in a condo downtown Chicago with a Vizsla, but they were avid runners. It was a perfect home for that dog, right? So being able to give them what they just had to work with getting them a little training, but he had the perfect, it was a perfect life for that particular group of that particular family. Undies and socks are good for stealing and destroying. Well, you're gonna use it. You can, but Amy used it for good, not evil, Ronnie. So something to think about. So
Bam had an expensive habit for a while.
for
I had
what?
to. I lost a lot of pairs of underwear. They became Swiss cheesy.
Oh, yes. Yep. But yeah, again, being creative and thinking outside the box, what works for your particular dog, and actually change up and be more creative in your training, so that it also doesn't become such a chore when you're kind of thinking of different ways to incorporate different things, and incorporating what they're training, what you're working on into their lives, so it's just easier depending on what you want them to do for you and in the relationship they have with you. Anyway, I hope you found it helpful. We are diligently looking for video, and I think Lisa has shot some video. Next week we are going, like as Joanne alluded to, we're going to be chatting about what we learned at the Resilience Rainbow, and we're gonna seminar, and we're gonna kind of try to do the cliff notes for that and kind of talk a little bit about that, so that you guys can learn. And one of the things we want you to remember, the reason we do those Facebook lives is so that you guys have a better relationship with your dogs and to get to think about things a little differently, and and be with your dogs in a different way, in a better way, and educate other people about them as well, right? Like, as much as we can. Obviously, you can't make people do things, but just have better relationship with your dogs. And again, no relationships are perfect. All relationships are not perfect. So we just do the best we can every day and go on our way. So anyway, hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Bye.